Very much for those member statements. We'll now get ready to move on to oral questions put by members to ministers. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Sunday, an article was posted in the Cape Breton Post outlining a Sydney River boy's experiences with bullying. The mother felt left down by the Department of Education. She felt she had to turn to the media to get some help for her son. Now, the minister says bullying statistics have been going down, but I don't think that's much comfort, Mr. Speaker, for victims of more than 1,000 annually reported instances of bullying in this province. It's probably not much comfort to their families either. My question for the Premier is, what action is his government taking in response to this latest account of bullying in our schools?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Member mentioned, the Minister of Education is with our partners across the province and in schools to continue to ensure that we provide a safe environment for our kids. One case of bullying is one too many, Mr. Speaker. We are pleased that we're moving in the right direction, but we know there's more work to do, and it will take, Mr. Speaker, all of us, including the department as well as those communities, working collaboratively with parents and kids who come forward to ensure that we deal with bullying in all its forms.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No child should be afraid to go to sleep at night because they know that in the morning they have to get up and go back to the place where they're bullied, back to school. This government hasn't demonstrated that they can take action, the action that's needed. And when people come forward, it has to be taken seriously by the government. So will the Premier provide some peace of mind to the parents and students of this province and give some assurance that the government will stop turning a blind eye to bullying and start to take some actual action when people come forward?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious issue, Mr. Speaker, that has been going on in communities and schools across our province. The Honourable Member would know this government has taken this issue seriously. The inflammatory remarks, Mr. Speaker, indicates that he's not taking this issue seriously, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is we continue to move and continue to ensure that this place is safe. It's not a political football, Mr. Speaker, that people should try to win political points on this issue, Mr. Speaker. We should collectively all be working hard to ensure that every child in this province feels safe going into schools, and that's what we continue to do, whether it's through our code of conduct, Mr. Speaker, or the effort that we're making with our SACs and schools across this province to ensure that they are safe for staff, students, and the students that go into that space, Mr. Speaker. And we want parents to feel comfortable to reach out, and when they do, the Honourable Member is absolutely right. They should be taken seriously, and we should respond.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
This is the province where Pink Shirt Day was started, Mr. Speaker. This is the province that commissioned the There's No App for That report on bullying that's since got national and some international attention, Mr. Speaker. This is the province that has the position of anti-bullying coordinator right within our Department of Education. Yet statistics have only decreased minimally since action was started to take on the report. Can the Premier give us an explanation, maybe devoid of political rhetoric? Can the Premier give us some explanation why this government is coming up so far short when it comes to addressing bullying and cyberbullying in the school system?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member in his question actually demonstrates the fact that we're continuing to see a decline in that, Mr. Speaker. The work that's happening in communities across this province is having an impact. Mr. Speaker, we know there's more work to do, but in his own question, he answered it, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is we have taken this issue seriously. The incidents are declining. There's more work to do, and we're going to continue to do that, Mr. Speaker, to work with communities across this province to ensure that our children feel safe, Mr. Speaker, in their school environment, and quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, beyond, at home as well.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, since 1992, when Nova Scotia Power was privatized, more than $3 billion has been paid out in company dividends. This is $3 billion that could have been spent supporting a transition of our energy infrastructure towards renewables, could have been spent on lowering people's cost of power, could have been spent on hospitals, nursing homes, or schools. So I want to ask the Premier, Wouldn't it have been better, we here think so, wouldn't it have been better if that $3 billion had been available for public purposes rather than for the profits of Emera and Nova Scotia Power?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable for the question. As he would know, it's opportune when his time in government, Mr. Speaker, again to see an escalation of power rates under their leadership. Very pleased to be able to tell the honourable member we have stable energy rates in this province. We continue to see a path forward to provide those stable energy rates as we continue to green up the grid, Mr. Speaker. I am not against private sector, Mr. Speaker. As a matter of fact, that they will be the people who will drive the economic growth inside of this province. They are the people who are driving the economic growth in this province, and we, the government, will continue to put in place policies that reflect that, Mr. Speaker, that we see them as an asset. It's how we're going to grow good opportunities for our sons and daughters, Mr. Speaker, and we fully expect the independent regulator from government to ensure that our utility lives, Mr. Speaker, within inside the regulated environment that it's been set to live in.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, the government wishes to expand the profit opportunities for Emera shareholders outside Canada without placing any obligation on the company to increase investment here or to provide any benefits for ratepayers in Nova Scotia. What about this does the Premier think is fair?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, again, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member should read the bill, Mr. Speaker. It locks in Emera, whose headquarters will be locked into this province, Mr. Speaker. The language in and around that clearly dictates, Mr. Speaker, that the headquarters will remain here, Mr. Speaker. It has limited to do, Mr. Speaker, with the bill increasing their profits. What it actually does, Mr. Speaker, it allows them to go to the open market like every other utility and borrow at the appropriate cost of borrowing money, Mr. Speaker. That is a good thing. It allows them to reinvest back in not only in the infrastructure here, but, Mr. Speaker, in their international corporate entities, Mr. Speaker, which in turn will drive investment and revenue back into Nova Scotians, Mr. Speaker. That is an employer, Mr. Speaker, that has been providing opportunities for Nova Scotians, Mr. Speaker. That's what this bill is about, ensuring that they can be viable in the long run right here in Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, thousands of people for whom the Premier has responsibility live in Nova Scotia today in energy poverty, which those who are expert in this field say it means anyone who's paying more than 10% of their income out in household energy and fuel. Many, many people making $30,000 or so in our province are paying out $3,000 or more in order to keep the house warm and to keep the lights on. Mr. Speaker, the CEO of Emera, if he had to spend 10% of his income to heat his home, his annual heating cost, 10% of $6.2 million, would be $620,000 a year. But that isn't how it works, because it's not him who's caught in the spiral of energy poverty. Mr. Speaker, after all these years of our ensuring Emera's executive salaries and their profits, doesn't the Premier think the company should be offering to do something for the people of Nova Scotia rather than calculating how to get something more from them?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, again, Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, is about boring, Mr. Speaker, to allow them to invest in their business infrastructure, which allows, Mr. Speaker, to provide opportunity inside of our own province. The honourable member, though, raises an issue around energy poverty, one that his party did not take seriously when they were in government, Mr. Speaker. They continue to allow power rates to escalate, Mr. Speaker. We've provided a stable environment. He would also know, Mr. Speaker, that we continue to make sure that to keep the heat continues to keep pace and allow that we continue to help those low-income Nova Scotians who require support. Time after time, he and his party have voted against initiatives that have allowed to make sure that we look after the most vulnerable citizens in our province, whether it comes the issue of electricity, Mr. Speaker, whether it's rent subs, whether it's providing good opportunities, Mr. Speaker. They continue to vote against it. We're going to continue to do our role to ensure that we work with all Nova Scotians to provide them with an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to lessen their own costs. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, we're going to work with the private sector to grow good job opportunities in this province, Mr. Speaker. That's the single best thing we can do for all Nova Scotians, is provide them a job opportunity.
The Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we asked if the Premier had attempted to contact the 3 former members of this House who had come forward and raised serious questions about the conduct of the Minister of Education. The Premier said he had received a copy of the letter, but since it was addressed to you, Mr. Speaker, it fell to the Speaker to respond. But the Premier also disputed some of what was asserted in the letter, specifically the notion that he had been made aware of the accusations at that time. Since the Premier just told us that one bullying incident is too many, and since he said that it was his job to provide a safe environment in schools, I'll call upon him to provide the same assurity to us in the People's House. Can I ask the Premier why he won't simply pick up the phone and call these former members and ask them to tell him their story?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question from the Honourable Member. As I said yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I was CC'd along with the other leaders of the House to, Mr. Speaker, post a letter that went to you, Mr. Speaker. I took the issue very seriously. I looked through my entire records, Mr. Speaker, to find out if either one of those members had contacted me or, quite frankly, the two leaders who were representing the party at the time. At no point, Mr. Speaker, had there been any documentation in the Premier's office or, Mr. Speaker, in my constituent office in the riding of Annapolis. And on top of that, Mr. Speaker, I continue to tell, and I'll tell the Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, when it was said that I was made aware of this issue, Mr. Speaker, back in 2012, 2013, absolutely I was not.
The Honourable Member for Cole Harbour, Eastern Passage. Mr.
Speaker, I don't agree that the Premier has taken this issue seriously, otherwise I wouldn't keep raising the issue. We'll agree that the Premier maybe didn't know back then, but we keep asserting he does know now. Yesterday we asked if the Premier would commit to reaching out to the former members in question. We didn't get an answer. The Premier responded by recounting, again as he just did, all the ways that there has been no communication in the past. The Premier can find no indication that he's made any attempt to get the facts on these incidents, and frankly, neither can we. That's why we keep asking. This issue is not about a political football. If it was, I would call it Deflectgate. Will the Premier do the right thing, call these former members, and get a full account of their accusations? Then we will take the Premier seriously when he says he's taking the issue seriously.
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, in her remarks, Mr. Speaker, she laid out these are accusations, Mr. Speaker, that fall in the purview of the Province House, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member should know by now, I don't control Province House, Mr. Speaker. It falls under you as the Speaker, Mr. Speaker. You are the one who manages the Province House, not the Premier. What I did, though, Mr. Speaker, when the letter came to me, I want to tell the Honourable Member I took this issue seriously. I continue to take it seriously. We continue to make sure there was no contact with me. And I want to assure the Honourable Member at no time, did anyone reach out to me, tell me there's a physical contact between anyone. Mr. Speaker,
the Honourable Premier.
The party can yell when he's sitting down and stand. Why doesn't he stand up and ask me this very question, Mr. Speaker? The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, we took this issue seriously and will continue to do so, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Stephen Saunders and his family have been through much uncertainty about Stephen's access to the cancer care services he needed. After several rounds of chemotherapy, he was told the only other treatment option was a procedure provided in Boston. He applied for out-of-province treatment and was denied. His family and friends started writing letters and went to the media. Luckily, Stephen's application for out-of-province care was approved, and he recently completed a successful round of treatment in Boston. So my question to the Minister of Health is, does he think it is acceptable patients have to plead their case to the media, to their MLAs, and friends and family have to engage in a letter-writing campaign to ensure patients receive the care that they need?
The Honourable Premier, the Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. I believe all members of the legislature recognize and I think share the appreciation for the Saunders family and the success of the treatment. But, Mr. Speaker, what I can assure the member opposite is under my tenure anyway, Nova Scotians don't have to engage in letter writing campaigns or going to the media. I follow the processes in place to consider exceptional treatment programs as this one was. Mr. Speaker, I required additional information from clinicians. It was the clinicians who provided the details and the recommendations, as they do anytime there's an exceptional request for drugs or treatments that don't currently have the, that are needed on an exception basis.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Centre.
Sadly, Mr. Speaker, the time is running out for the Saunders family, though. Mr. Speaker, when the NDP was in office, we brought in new out-of-province healthcare travel policy. It's been almost a decade since that policy was brought in. Much has changed, so has healthcare. Stephen Saunders' case highlights the need to revisit these policies. to evaluate how they have worked and to come up with modern solutions that will make patients' lives easier. So my question to the Minister of Health and Wellness is, will he commit to review the out-of-province healthcare travel policy, and will he make that review public?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for raising the question. First of all, I want to clarify for the members of the House, there are really two topics here, I think, that have come up in these questions. One is about treatment programs and options and whether or not they've reached a consensus within the clinical community and the reviews that take place nationally to help inform provincial guidelines for treatment programs. That's one piece. The other piece specifically about out-of-province travel program, Mr. Speaker, that's something that I recognized earlier this year and currently have staff reviewing that policy. I've already made that publicly known, Mr. Speaker, through the media.
The Honourable Member for Kings North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. On March 13th, the Leader of the Opposition asked the Premier if he had read the 60 stories compiled by the mental health advocacy group #HowManyNSHAIWK. And senior NSHA officials had said these stories would be passed on to the Premier and the Minister of Health, but the Premier said he had not seen them, and I'll table that. Well, I brought a copy of these stories, and I'll table them so that the Premier can read them, since his copy seems to have gotten lost. So my question for the Premier is now that he has a copy of these important first voice accounts of our mental health care system, will he read them?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the honourable member for the question. This is an important issue, Mr. Speaker. When the Leader of the Conservative Party asked me that question, what I said was that I had not seen them. But I also said, Mr. Speaker, that they would have been seen by those who were part of making the policy in and around part of that. But I'd be more than happy, Mr. Speaker, to get a copy of the information just tabled and be happy to follow through. But I want to tell the honourable member those voices were part of the decision-making that has gone on and will continue to be, Mr. Speaker. And families across this province who are continuing to struggle should know that they're being heard, and we'll continue to work with them, and we'll continue to rely on our healthcare experts to provide us with evidence-based solutions, Mr. Speaker, that will help those families.
The Honourable Member for Kings North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier for that answer. This package includes 60 stories plus 13 submitted on March 6 in this legislature about gaps in the mental health care system. But let's be honest, we could have easily collected 160 or 260 stories. Every day, someone is failed by gaps in our mental health system, yet nothing seems to change. Throwing money at the problem without properly analyzing it will not solve it. So my question for the Premier is this: will the Premier commit to including first voice accounts of the gaps in our mental health care system when considering future investments?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, as I just said in my first question, Mr. Speaker, those voices would have been part of what was going into the work around Dr. Stan Kuchar did, as well as Star Dobson. The advice that we were given as a government would include it. Those families and many members across this province, Mr. Speaker, we listen to Nova Scotians on all issues, Mr. Speaker, and we certainly will continue to listen to those families impacted by this issue.
The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Education. On March 6th, during an exchange and question period, I stated that bullying in our schools is rampant. The Minister of Education kindly informed me that I was wrong and that statistics showed that bullying is actually going down, and I can table that, Mr. Speaker. I've seen the data, and I'll admit there is a slight decrease, but the number of incidents is still too high. This isn't a reduction that I'd be celebrating. My question for the minister is, based on the statistics that we have had over 1,000 reported bullying incidents in 2017-18, does the minister feel that our work is done in addressing bullying?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, and the answer is of course not. You know, one bullying incident is one too many. It's a complicated issue. We're talking about people's behavior. And there's a number of factors that contribute to that. So we have approached this in a really systemic way with interventions, behavioral interventions, with restorative practices, and of course with disciplinary action as well. It seems that, and with strong policies for online behavior. that also come with consequences, and teaching our children, using these moments as well to be learning moments for our students to help them become better people. And of course, it's not to be celebrated that we still have bullying incidences, but the fact that we are seeing a trend in the right direction is something to take some comfort in. And of course, there's still a lot more work to do, and we're committed to doing that.
The honourable member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll admit I find bullying statistics hard to trust. I don't believe bullying is something that is regularly reported, especially with most of it moving to online, where parents and school staff don't even know that it's happening. The minister seems to think that because these statistics show a minor reduction, the situation is improving. But as he has just said, I agree, one case of bullying is way too many. So my question to the minister is, what is his plan for making significant and sustained reductions in bullying incidents, and what are the levels of the discipline action that he speaks of? The
Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'll point the member's attention to the investments that we've made in education. We have put new behavioral support teachers in place. We have child and youth care practitioners in place. We will have further announcements in the very near future on new non-teaching supports. All of these folks together work with our teachers, work with our administrators to help students deal with whatever issues they're dealing with, help address issues of bullying, help improve behavior, and help ensure that every one of these negative incidences can hopefully at the end of the day be a learning experience for everybody to help our kids be better people at the end of the day. Thank you.
The honourable member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Teachers and principals are being faced with bullying and cyberbullying that they simply do not have the resources to handle. As cyberbullying gets more creative and advanced, those in charge of keeping our students safe are finding themselves out of their depth. School principals are spending their Monday mornings trying to discipline students over Facebook comments that were written on Saturday night. My question for the Minister of Education is, how, as he continues to redesign our education system, what concrete tools are being provided to teachers and principals to combat bullying?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much. The member pointed out to one of the most complicated factors in this situation, and that is cyberbullying. So we do have CyberScan process in place. We have the Cyber Protection Act in place. These are new initiatives that our government has taken on, and we are seeing some success there in that I think we're at about 73% of reported cases being resolved, and this gives more concrete objective tools to our folks within the system. It creates a law that supports these policies, and at the end of the day we hope to see the continued success that we're having, and hopefully the trend continues to go in the right direction. But that's not to say our work is done. That's not to say we're resting on our laurels. This is a complicated situation that will continually take constant work and effort to resolve.
The honourable member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today's bullies cannot be dealt with or as easily identified as the way they were in the past. We know that. It seems like every day there is a new method of wreaking havoc on someone else's life. And as a mother who had a child who was bullied so badly into the school system, I know those havocs. As this problem gets worse and worse, I think many parents, teachers, and students are wondering about the government's anti-bullying plans. They would have to look beyond this year's budget and business plan, neither of which have made any mention of resources for bullying and cyberbullying. My question is, does the minister feel the lack of attention to bullying in this budget is a fair summary of where it falls within the government's priorities?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, that's not the case. In fact, the additional funding we're putting into the education system to hire more people, behavioral experts, child and youth care practitioners, and other professionals who help students deal with their behavioral issues, their emotional issues, to help create a restorative process to make these difficult moments learning experiences for everybody. We have invested in these supports every single year, Mr. Speaker, that we've been in government. We've increased investments in education. We've hired more of these folks, and we are seeing the trend heading in the right direction, recognizing there's still a lot more work to do.
The honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Lands and Forestry. Carmen Williams is a carpenter and a former forest technician in Shelburne County. He's not against forestry, but he has joined more than 1,000 people who have signed a letter to the minister calling for a moratorium on clear cuts in the county until the community is consulted. The group would like to meet with the minister. Mr. Speaker, the Leahy report emphasized the need to improve the public consultation process for harvest plans. The minister has started an internal working group on that topic, but has taken no interim steps to engage communities. One step would be to meet with concerned communities. Can the minister commit to meeting with community members in Shelburne County before any more harvests occur?
The Honourable Minister of Lands and Forestry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question. I'm aware of that specific stand. There continues to be a process in place for engagement with the community. They have 40 days to submit their views, and we take those comments very seriously, and our IRM team looks at that, which includes biologists, which includes foresters. We do our best to make the best treatments. We also are making a significant progress on the Leahy report, updating our forest management guide. We will have a workshop and stakeholder engagement in the coming months. We have our experts, external experts that we've reached out to that should be joining our internal teams shortly. So we are making progress, and I continue to look forward as we make change to move towards ecological forestry in the province.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Mr. Speaker, the Leahy report emphasizes, and I quote, the critical need for the embrace of openness, transparency, collaboration, and accountability by the department. But public consultation at this point has not gotten better. The one mechanism the public has for viewing harvest plans is through the online harvest viewer, but recently changes were made in what some feel is a crude public relations spin. The term clear cut has been removed and replaced by less transparent technical terms, and past harvests are no longer visible on the map, which makes it more difficult to see the overall number of harvests being approved in a given area. Does the minister think that these changes qualify as embracing openness, transparency, collaboration, and accountability like the Leahy report called for?
The Honourable Minister of Lands and Forestry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we continue to take feedback in this interim period before the recommendations are fully implemented. There were some changes based on feedback around upload time in terms of the past maps. Those have actually since been added back to the map, so that statement's not entirely accurate. And we actually put more treatment specificity out there so that there is no debate about what the actual prescription or treatment is on the ground. We've also made extra changes in terms of our retention quality in the forest, and also having setbacks from different areas. And if you'll see, there has been changes of treatments based on the reviews that continue to take place based on the public comments. We are making progress, and I continue to look forward to seeing how we can improve the way that we improve our transparency as we have been already. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Education. The 2012 Task Force on Bullying called for the implementation of digital citizenship to educate students, staff, parents, and the general public on safe practices online. The intention behind this comes from a good place, and on paper, it seems like it could be very effective. However, students aren't taking it seriously. It's something that they have to listen to, but it's more of a nuisance than anything with impact. My question for the Minister of Education is, what measures are in place to analyze the effectiveness of digital citizenship education?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As with any program in the Department of Education, there's a continual evaluation that does happen to make sure we're achieving our ends. I think the fact that we are seeing some improvements in the cyberbullying sphere is an indication that some of our strategies are having an impact. I know that the CyberScan intervention group has had I think over 1,100 presentations to teach our students about the effects and repercussions of cyberbullying, and to try and promote more responsible use of that technology that is better for all. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is, for all the positives technology has brought to our lives, it has also become a silent weapon. Through social media, cell phones, tablets, and everything else, students are waging wars against each other, and family members and school staff have no idea. Cyberbullying is a terrifying reality for far too many students, and the further we integrate technology into the schools, the higher the risk. Technology is important, but it should only be implemented alongside appropriate safety measures. My question is, what is the government doing to ensure technology is being safely integrated into learning?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much. The member speaks to a very real challenge. The rate of technological advancement is happening in an exponential way. It's not always easy to keep up with it. We do find ourselves across the globe responding to challenges as they arise. However, this is something our government has been very proactive on. We passed the Cyber Protection Act. We do have the CyberScan unit, which has provided over 1,100 presentations to approximately 25,000 citizens, and over 90% of the youth that have completed the survey have indicated that the presentation has actually had an impact on them and made them reconsider their online safety and online use. That is a stat that we should be encouraged with, because this is about helping our young people learn, make their own decisions, and take responsibility for their actions.
The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is again to the Minister of Education. As you can see, this is a very close subject to my heart. One of the most concrete steps against bullying that this government has taken is the creation of an anti-bullying coordinator position with the Department of Education. However, in conversations with educators, the few who have even heard of this position weren't able to name the person who currently holds the job. If those on the ground level of this issue don't know who this person is, what their mandate is, or that the position exists, you've got to call the effectiveness of the position into question. My question for the Minister is, what is the mandate of the anti-bullying coordinator?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
To help proactively deal with reported incidences of bullying and to help ensure that the appropriate supports are put in place for those that are impacted by it, and also to ensure that the appropriate supports are in place and restorative process, disciplinary actions are taking place for those that are conducting this negative behavior as well.
The Honourable Member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The task force was very clear that the anti-bullying coordinator was to be a high-profile student advocate. It was envisioned as an independent position reporting to several deputy ministers. The current position is nothing like that. They have a low profile and buried in the bureaucracy of the Department of Education. School staff doesn't even know the position exists or what its mandate is. This is a far cry from the level of action needed to combat bullying. My question to the Minister is, does the Minister believe that in its current form this position is effective, or does he believe we should rethink the nature of this very vital position?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
I think we need to continually evaluate the positions that we have in any department, particularly the Department of Education. I think there is some evidence to show that the efforts we've put in place around anti-bullying is being successful. We are seeing trends of reported incidences going in the right direction. They are dropping. That is not to say that there's not more work to do. So I think, particularly in a department that is about learning, we need to continually learn ourselves and adapt our strategies and policies to ensure we're meeting the needs of our students, particularly on something that's important.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Justice. The Anti-Bullying Action Plan called for government, community, and law enforcement to work together to address human trafficking. Victims of bullying are highly likely to be the ones that are lured into human trafficking. A young person who's feeling vulnerable, alone, defenseless, and just wants to get away from the ordinary life as they know it, is easily manipulated and drawn into this human trafficking, and it's a very scary time for them. So my question is, can the minister confirm that the measures called for the 2012 action plan have in fact been implemented?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my colleague mentioned earlier in previous questions, the creation of the cyber scan unit is education specific and supports to our young people. That forms part of the strategies going forward, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly want to acknowledge the comments of my colleague that this victimization in itself are causes and contributors to criminality. So those circumstances are being addressed, but specific to human trafficking, Mr. Speaker, this is an area that is very topical. Nova Scotia has some of the highest statistics in the country. We are working presently with our federal government and looking forward to an announcement in the very near future.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the minister for his comments, and he's correct. It's actually quite astonishing that this province is leading in cases of human trafficking in Canada. It's hard to believe, but it's the truth. And discussions with local police have shown glaring gaps in training and education around human trafficking. Some officers that I spoke to didn't even know purchasing sex has been illegal in Canada for years. They didn't even know. And we are failing the most vulnerable people by not taking concrete action to stop human trafficking before it occurs. And we have to be going after the pimps. We have to be going after the Johns. That's where it starts. So I would like the minister to outline what this government's action plan is to end human trafficking.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for the question. I think we would be naive to think that we will end this major and serious issue, Mr. Speaker, but I want to commit to my colleague and all members of this legislature that we are committed to addressing human trafficking. As I indicated earlier, Mr. Speaker, we're working very closely with our federal partners on this. There are existing resources in the province, both integrated units between the Halifax Regional Police and the RCMP, as well as standalone positions. Mr. Speaker, our commitment will be demonstrated in the very near future with an announcement with the federal government.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. This will be the third estimates process where I will be talking to the Minister about the extremely dangerous Lancaster intersection where Highway 118 turns into Woodland Avenue. Mr. Speaker, last fall I was told that the department was going to measure traffic and we've heard no report. There was a study done again this winter, but I still haven't heard any results. This has been on the department's radar for longer than the 2 years that I've been here, and still nothing is happening with the intersection. While traffic is heavy, accidents are common, and the community feels unsafe. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister, after all of the studies and talk, what are the delays in fixing the Lancaster intersection?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member for the question. Rest assured that we are reviewing that. We have a great partnership with HRM in that instance. There are discussions about how the intersection might look if a transfer of that intersection was made, and I'd be more than happy to share the latest results of the traffic reviews with the member. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer, although I feel like I've been hearing that answer for many, many months. My community hasn't heard anything from the department and is feeling frustrated and angry that this seems to barely register on the province's radar. This is the busiest corridor in Dartmouth. The lights do nothing to slow traffic coming in off the highway. Parents are afraid to let their children cross the street to get to Creighton Park Elementary, and a 4-year period saw 60 traffic collisions. HRM Councillor Sam Austin has made the apt observation that a roundabout would be a traffic calming strategy, as the minister has alluded to, and the city is willing to do it if the province would just give over the land to the city with a little bit of a bonus package to help them get it done. When I left estimates last year, my understanding was that that was the route the province was ready to go down. Mr. Speaker, when does the minister plan on following through with this plan?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much. And discussions around such a transfer and a reconfiguration of that intersection are ongoing. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Community Services. Last May, a national survey by Plan International Canada found that 70% of Canadian women ages 18 to 25 have missed school, work, social events because of their period. and I will table that survey. 1/3 of Canadian women under 25 struggle to afford menstrual hygiene products to manage their periods. No matter the strides that we are taking for gender equality, this will always be a cost that women bear the burden of. So my question for the minister is, what current action is being taken to make this natural part of a woman's life more affordable?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I want to thank the honourable member for the question. There is no doubt about it that probably every woman in this room has at one time or another been caught unprepared. And for most of us, we just go out and buy something. The fact of the matter is there are some people who cannot do that, Mr. Speaker, and that's why one of the pilot projects that's underway right now in our Building Vibrant Communities program is in fact looking at one option for making sure that products get out to women who may be in need. It's a program that's underway in Sheet Harbour, and we're in the process now of looking at the results of that. There are a number of other different ways that can be delivered as well, and so we're looking at what's the best way. Thank you.
The honourable member for Pickering West.
Thank you, and I thank the minister for her concern and attention to this, because it's important for us all to remember in this is that menstrual hygiene products are not a luxury. They are a necessity. The federal government removed the tax on menstrual products in 2015, and we know private groups and pharmacies across this province and schools even are looking to stock their rooms and promote and give out free products. But we must do more, and we can do more. So my question to the minister is, will the minister expand the special needs provision in the Employment Support and Income Assistance Act to include menstrual hygiene products?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I want to thank the honourable member for that question. That's absolutely one of the options that we're looking at. What that will do is help women who are on income assistance be able to, women and girls, actually, we should make that point, buy those particular items, Mr. Speaker. But it doesn't help people who are living on lower incomes who may not be in receipt of income assistance in that. So this is why we're looking at what is the best way to meet the most people. I would also be remiss, Mr. Speaker, if I did not give a shout out to our colleagues in the NDP who, when they were in government, Mr. Speaker, removed the provincial portion of the tax off of sanitary products as well.
The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Justice. When the government commissioned the There's No App for That report on bullying, it took a progressive first step into ending bullying. The recommendations covered a wide range of areas, from changes in our schools to changes in our communities. Yet here we are, 7 years later, and still there are glaring gaps in the implementation of many of the recommendations. My question for the minister: is the government still planning to implement the recommendations in this report? Thank you, Mr.
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the objectives of government specific to cyberbullying is to mitigate the events and circumstances, Mr. Speaker. We recognize the impact that cyberbullying is having on our young people, and quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, across the adult population as well. With the earlier comments around online bullying, we see this to be front and centre, Mr. Speaker. As has been mentioned in this legislature, the creation of the Cyber Protection Act and the Cyber Protection Unit is addressing some of that, Mr. Speaker. But I want to acknowledge here, and we're prepared as a government, we'll continue to work towards addressing this broader issue. But at the present time, Mr. Speaker, these initiatives are demonstrating significant progress. Of all the students over 25,000 participants in a survey, Mr. Speaker, 92% indicated that it changed their online behaviours, Mr. Speaker. That is the foundational step in addressing this particular issue.
The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Speaker, in order for us to move together as a province, we need to equip ourselves with the best information possible. This report, Mr. Speaker, has been cited nationally and internationally. It has been relied upon by the Senate of Canada and the Supreme Court. Yet the government has paid little attention to it outside of a first glance. It seems like a slight drop in reported incidents is all it took for this government to consider it a job well done. So my question is this: if this report is good enough and relevant enough for the Supreme Court of Canada, why isn't it good enough for for the government of Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to speak again to the progressive efforts that are being made specific to the Cyber Scan Unit and the Cyber Protection Act. Mr. Speaker, we recognize and acknowledge this is a major issue. But, Mr. Speaker, like any issue, you can react or you can respond. We believe responding with an educational foundational program through the Cyber Scan Unit, education principle to resolving this issue, Mr. Speaker. And the youth, in response to the surveys, 92% of them have indicated it changes their behaviours online. That is first and foremost the important element to finding a solution through those education meetings.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Premier. As technology continues to develop, the dangers of bullying and cyberbullying grow in ways we couldn't imagine. Growing and adapting alongside these changes is the only way to stay ahead of them. In the Speak Up action plan to address bullying, one recommendation was the re-establishment of the Nova Scotia Youth Advisory Council. Who better to keep us informed on the latest changes in social technology than young people who use it every day, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, my question to the Premier is this. As the Minister responsible for youth, I wonder if he can provide the House with an update on the status of this advisory council. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, he would know, Mr. Speaker, through the Department of Education, we have a connection back through the youth in schools across this province. I also want to inform the House I have been meeting with young people ranging from leaving school to the age of mid-30s. Dealing with some of these very issues. The most recent one actually was with a group of young people from Halifax, some of whom are still in school and some of whom are actually out in the workforce dealing with issues that impact them directly. And I'm looking forward to traveling across the province. I have other arrangements set up to continue to meet with young people to ensure that their voice is heard at all stages, not just at when they're in P to 12 education, but quite frankly as they move through post-secondary and into the workforce.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Mr. Speaker, I agree that it is important. Indeed, it is important to continue on with those conversations with our young people. We know that bullying and cyberbullying are not slowing down, and the government, I believe, has missed many opportunities, Mr. Speaker, to make our schools safer. There is no one who knows the impact and the strategies of bullies and cyberbullies more than the students who are on the ground every day experiencing them. They are the first voice. It is our responsibility, Mr. Speaker, to do everything we can to keep our students safe at school and online, and including them in the discussions is a simple first step, Mr. Speaker. My question for the Premier is, will he establish the Premier's Youth Advisory Council, as he promised to do in the 2017 election, to hear directly from students about what is going on in our schools? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, as I said in my first answer, Mr. Speaker, in the process of doing that, there's an avenue for the P to 12 students. Mr. Speaker, what we're looking for is to ensure that we hear multiple youth voices. It's why I said to the Honourable Member in his first question, I met with more recently with a group here in Halifax. I'll be reaching out across the province to get both an urban and rural perspective. Challenges associated with not only finding them way through our education system, but with some of the challenges they face, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, after they leave our education system and find their way into the workforce, and trying to get a fulsome view of from young people across the province.
The Honourable Member for Troy, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question today is for the Minister of Labour and Advanced Education. Yesterday, international students delivered a petition to the Dalhousie Board of Governors and held a sit-in to oppose massive increases in international student fees. I had questioned him about this in budget estimates. Over the next 4 years, Dalhousie is set to increase those fees by as much as $10,000. Many of these students need food banks to eat, and one student, Lovepreet Singh Dillon, said that most international students have to borrow money from their banks back home and pay high interest rates to be able to afford these tuition fees here in Nova Scotia. In response, the minister told reporters that limiting international student fees would be overstepping the government's role. I'll table that. So, Mr. Speaker, will the minister admit that increasing tuition fees by $10,000 will discourage international students from choosing Nova Scotia for their university education?
The Honourable Minister of Labour and Advanced Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm actually very proud of the work our universities have done in keeping our international student fees low. Nova Scotia is less expensive to go to university for an international student than BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Quebec, as well as PEI, Mr. Speaker. We are the third least expensive place for an international student to go in Canada. And as well, Mr. Speaker, our data shows that the rate of increases in Nova Scotia are less than the average in Canada. So, Mr. Speaker, not only are we leading the way in Canada in terms of how expensive we are for international students, but the rate of increase is actually lower than the rest of Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Well, in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, that's a complete fabrication. International students are a huge contributor to our economy.
Order, please. The honourable member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River will retract that statement. The honourable member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Will you ask me to leave the room again today, Mr. Speaker? Yes, I'll retract that. Mr. Speaker, in 2014, international students spent $324 million, resulting in 3,200 jobs and $142 million in wages. The province should be doing everything it can to attract and retain international students, not pushing them away with high fees. International students have been calling...
The time allotted for